Hi, I'm Rob Gotti of the Westwood Select Board. I'm here to talk to you about our proposed Fire Station 1 project that we will be voting on at this year's annual town meeting on May 19th. So joining me today is Chief Lund, Assistant Chief McCarthy, and Anthony Burke, the head of the Fire Union. Let's begin with the history of FS1. It was built in 1948 originally. Back then, we were an all-male volunteer firefighter department. Westwood was a town of just under 6,000 people. That year, there were 98 calls for service. The station was then renovated in 1975. At that time, the department was now a professional all-male fire department with 4 members on staff 24/7. Westwood had grown to just under 14,000 residents, and there were 1,100 calls for service in that year. So what's changed since 1975? Well, for one, the size and the weight of the apparatus.
Trucks were a lot smaller. They didn't carry as much equipment as we do today. Average truck is about 30 to 40,000 pounds heavier today than they were back then.
Another thing that's changed since 1975 is the makeup of the department.
Just like many other industries, our workforce has changed over the years. We now have 3 female firefighters that work with us on a daily basis.
When I was a new mom last year and I wanted to breastfeed for a year and I wasn't able to do that because there's no private lactation room. But that's it, just some co-ed issues. Yep.
Another thing that's changed since 1975 is we've learned a little bit about safety and wellness.
Not only are we susceptible 3 times the regular person to get cancer anyways, we have a bunch of things that can hurt us around our firehouse. In the back bays, we have our lockers. That's where we put our gear on. We're lucky to have 2 sets of gear. The problem is we have nowhere to store clean gear. We start the trucks up where we have our gear.
When we talk about having the apparatus arrayed such that they can all get out onto 109 rapidly, Chief, talk to why that design is so important.
We did the study and it was showing where the majority of our calls are. So the elderly population tends to be our biggest users of the ambulance service. So we're doing several calls a day to Foxhill Village or Highland Glen or Westwood Glen. So having the right pieces of equipment in the right area to respond to the calls that we need to go to is paramount.
You're starting to see the back wall literally pull away from the rest of the building. We literally had to put lally columns and I-beams in place to support the apparatus floor, to keep the trucks from falling through the floor and that wall from separating that you saw earlier. So if you were going to start a project like this, you'd start with the subject matter experts. You'd start with the men and women of the department and you'd ask, what do you have to have? What are the must-haves?
We sent out a survey to every member in the department. All of that data was collected and the group then came out with a list of what our most needs are.
We looked at other departments that have been constructed recently because those are the departments that we compete with for talent, and we looked at the types of things that they had that were nice to haves. Several of those things were considered and ultimately wiped off the board.
Needham has the whole front apron is heated, so they don't have to worry about plowing if they get an emergency call. And they don't have to worry about slipping backing in there. Would have been nice to have was one of the first things we cut out.
So it's a 36,000 square foot building. You see the 5 apparatus bays that open directly onto Route 109 to minimize response time to some of our highest volume call areas. Now as you look at this building, I want you to look at the entire thing. The dark red area is what's designed to keep you and I safe. The pink area behind it is a decontamination space where the equipment and the gear that they wear can be cleaned and stored for their next call. Now, that's also designed to have airlocks to keep the exhaust from the vehicles as well as the toxins that are being decontaminated from infiltrating the living space above. As you look at this green area at the bottom of the screen, that's a triage area.
Walk-in medicals happen sometimes several times a week.
Fire Station 2 does have a triage room, and 2 of the members of my crew delivered a baby. Someone pulled into the driveway, was active labor. They delivered a baby. I think it was a healthy girl. And they had privacy, they had everything they needed, made sure the mom and baby were comfortable. Once everything was delivered, they got back in the ambulance, they drove to the hospital. Whereas at Fire Station 1, that would be a nightmare if something like that came in.
Here we are on the second floor. This houses the living space, the administration, the training space. The red area is the administration space. The green area is the training space. There are 48 chairs in there. And Chief, how many members of the department do we have?
If everybody shows up, you're looking at 46 people. We have everybody show up, we're literally have the doors open and people standing outside trying to listen to the med control doctor because we don't have enough space to do it in the station.
So the yellow and orange area is the living space.
We've gone from a 4-member shift, all male, to possibly 8 people at one time, firefighter-wise.
When we have major storms coming through, or we need to prepare for a blizzard that's on its way in, oftentimes we'll call off-duty members back in to increase our on-duty shift complement.
The reason that we do that is because if there's a snowstorm or a hurricane or something, we can't rely on calling people back because they might not be able to get there. So we have to front load and staff heavy for those situations.
Yeah, it was Hurricane Sandy, we had people sleeping in the gym, a couple people sleeping in the chief's office on air mattresses. People were spread out in the day room. We had people on the floors upstairs in the hallway. There was pretty much only 4 or 5 bedrooms for about 14 members of the station at one time who were there for over 60 hours. We have run studies that say that we need more members on shift. We need to grow. If you build for this for now, this won't be talked about for another 50 years.
At the top of this slide, you'll see a white rectangle. That's the maintenance bay. It's not actually on the second floor. It's really not even on the first floor. It's on the ground floor and the back of the building.
The problem today is that none of our trucks fit in there. So any work that's being done on the engines, the ladders, is done outside. We had a problem where we had to send one of our engines to Cummins Diesel, and they went on strike, and we lost the truck for 6 months.
So a natural next question is, how much is all this going to cost? At the special town meeting in January of '24, the estimate was approximately $43 million. As the working group got going to refine and sharpen our pencils and take out anything that was a nice to have as opposed to a must have, that estimate came down to about $40 million in October of '24. By January of '25, we updated those estimates again, and it was holding steady at around just under $40 million. Well, now I'm happy to report that as we've opened our bids, the final cost of this is going to be $38.1 million. So the next question would be, well, how much is this going to cost the average homeowner in Westwood? Well, the average home is a little more than $1.2 million here in Westwood. And we modeled a number of scenarios ranging from 4% all the way up to 5.5% as interest rates are fluctuating. We think the most likely scenario is probably at 4.75% at this point, which would mean an average of $30.86 per 100,000 of home value, which means $372 a year for the average homeowner in Westwood. Think about that. That's roughly $1 a day. So let's talk about the process that this project has been through. The project has been presented to the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, and the Zoning Board of Appeals, and it received unanimous support from all 3 boards and commissions. So ultimately, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted the 7 variances that were requested. Just want to remind you that if we rebuilt the existing building brick by brick just as it is today, that would require 5 variances. Now, as part of that review process, there were a number of things that were done to try to address some of the concerns of the abutters. For example, there is no stormwater management whatsoever on that site today, and flooding in that neighborhood can be a problem with the runoff because of the hill. As part of that process, we not only have a 100-year stormwater management system, but at the recommendation of the Planning Board, we upgraded that to a 500-year stormwater management system. In terms of light and noise spill, we have a generator that is encased much like the generator at the Pine Hill School that is so quiet you can't hear it standing next to it. And all of the lighting that currently spills out into the neighborhood, all of the lighting is dark sky compliant, meaning there is absolutely no spill out into the neighborhood. So there have been a number of things that we've addressed. when there were concerns over traffic. Part of what we were hearing was how difficult it was to get out from Windsor onto 109, especially during the morning and evening rush. Well, we as a select board acted instantly in our authority as road commissioners. We went from hearing that concern in one of our select board meetings to voting and directing Todd Korchin, our DPW director, to put a "don't block the box" out in front of the light right there at Windsor. We also added a tremendous amount of landscaping and vegetation to help screen the building and the construction site from the abutting neighbors. So we have done a lot of things to try and hear the concerns and address the concerns in real time as this building was being designed and as we were deliberating on the things that we could do. The granting of those variances was challenged by a small group of abutters. The town has tried to work with the abutters to get to an agreeable solution. To date, we have not been able to do so, though we remain hopeful. But hope is not a strategy. This article, a change to our zoning bylaws exempting public safety buildings from our zoning, is an enabling article to allow the FS1 project to go forward. Let's be clear, we have 3 public safety buildings. We have FS2 and the police station, both of which are 10 years young. And now we have FS1 that needs to go forward. If we pass this, it ultimately means that this building is not subject to zoning, therefore doesn't need the variances, and so without that, there is nothing to challenge. So both of these articles will require a 2/3 majority vote at our annual town meeting on May 19th. The fire station funding will also need a simple majority vote at a special town election that will follow on June 3rd. I want to remind everyone that when we did the original public safety facility study back in 2013, that we did the police station and FS2 all within the confines of Prop 2.5. And then we pressed pause so the schools could go forward with one of their projects, which is now the Pine Hill Elementary School. But let me also remind you that when we place a call, these brave men and women never pause. It's now time that we answer their call.